Alright, so we're getting ready to pull this injection pump off to go back through it again. But before I pull it off, what I want to do is go ahead and set the engine on TDC number 1. Now, to do that with the engine together, because in the previous video I showed you how to do it when it's sitting on the ground, you're going to look back here at your timing window, and I'll show you that here in a second. And you're going to set this motor on 23 degrees. Then you'll remove this little timing window, and if you look in there, you'll see 2 vertical lines. That's the timing marks. That lower one will spin, and you need to line it up with the upper. And I'm a little off right now, but that's because of where it's bolted down here. It's not enough to affect the running of this tractor, but I'll try to get it a little better when we go back. But since that's lined up, when I go to put it back in, that's how I want it back, and everything's in time. So if you look closely into this hole, you'll see a little tick mark right there. That's your timing pointer that you need to line up with 23 degrees of timing. And you need to do that and line up the marks on the pump. Then you know when you pull this pump out and put it back that you're perfectly in time for it to fire on cylinder number 1. If you line that one up but your pump marks are not lined up, you're 180 degrees out, and you need to spin the engine over until you see the other set of timing marks. Once that mark lines up and your 2 marks in your timing window on the pump line up, you're on the correct stroke and you're in correct time. So now I'm going to go ahead and just set this cover back on there for now, and I'll go ahead and get it unbolted. And I've already removed the pump leak off line. So I'm going to undo the feed line right here, all 4 injector lines, pop the linkage off, then undo my 2 mounting nuts and lift that up and off the tractor. Alright, so there's the pump off. Now I'm going to get it everything just covered up. We'll take this back to the house, and we'll get this thing going through again. I have found 2 possible problem areas that I'm going to investigate, and I'll let you know if one of those is the problem. So let's get to tearing this thing apart. I've kind of narrowed it down to, I think, 2 possible issues. One is there was a pin up here that I could not remove. It may be stuck. The other may be the actual plungers on the distributor may be stuck or incorrectly set. So those are the 2 I'm going to try to focus on. And of course I'll show you resealing it, because I just bought a whole new reseal kit. So I reseal everything. I might not change the flex ring, but I will explain how it's done in this video. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do on this pump is we're going to remove this cover. And there's going to be our first seal. Next part we're going to remove is going to be this shutoff cam, which is this long piece right here. They make a tool to do this where it'll pry it off. I don't have it, so I'm going to just grab it with a pair of pliers. Make sure I grab it in the right location and pull it straight up. There's also another little clip right here that we need to remove. Same thing, just pull it. Now both of these clips are indexed and will only go in one way. So now we're going to pull throttle linkage off. We'll go ahead and remove what I call the little fork. And then we'll move the other side of the lever. Okay, the next piece to come out is going to be the governor spring. And that's just the little washer that goes here on our throttle shafts. To get this governor spring out, bolt right there. Take that, just unscrew it. Kind of keep your spring pushed upwards. Okay, so now you're going to come in here. You're going to lift that spring up. You're going to pull all the stuff off that's with it as well. You have this little piece that looks almost like a rivet. You have a small spring. You have another little piece that looks like a rivet. And you have a spacer. And then the spring itself. Then you can withdraw the governor bolt. Right here is the metering valve. And it has a hook on it for the governor right there. So I'm going to go ahead and lift the governor arm off of it and remove the metering valve and the spring. Next, we're going to remove these two nuts right here, and we're going to pull out a cross shaft that the governor kind of pivots on. Now this shaft has two O-rings on it, and it can be a little stubborn to get it to move. If you can push it to one side and remove one of the O-rings, it'll then move a whole lot easier back to the other side and come off. And I just noticed that this shaft was in there backwards. So now I should be able to go ahead and remove the governor assembly. Just going to lift up and out. So that's everything in here now. So now we're going to move up here and we're going to loosen these 4 bolts that hold this metering head on. So now our next step is we're going to have to remove the automatic advance here. So to remove that, first thing we got to do, let's see, let's go ahead and remove this plug. With this plug, you're going to need a very high quality flathead screwdriver because it is very tight. And as you can see, mine's kind of already chamfered out a little bit. Just remove that plug, set it aside. This little bolt in here is what they call a Bristol bit. And it basically looks like a spline drive. Well, you can take a 1/4 inch hex bit and it'll work, but it's going to be very tight. I'm actually going to take my pump and just lay it down on the side, and then I'll just give it a quick wrap. And it took 2 wraps to get that loose. That bolt in there is now loose with no special tool. Next, we have these 2 hex heads plugs here. Don't really have the right socket. I'm going to try this one. If this don't work, I got another one that's a little tighter. Okay, so there we go. Go ahead and unscrew both plugs a little bit. Now, these plugs are different. The plug here that is on the outside of the pump has a piston with a spring in it. And there's also a little indexing pan, whatever you want to call it, right there on it as well. The one on the back side also has a piston, but no spring. And a little indexing disc as well. And then there is also this little plastic piece. So now you can come in here and undo a little Bristol bit, bolt, and slide it through the hole. Okay, so now our next step is going to be removing this 12-point bolt here and these 2 bolts here. Once you get this bolt kind of loosened, you'll have to just pull it because these O-rings are holding it in place. Alright, so now we should be able to remove the entire pumping mechanism from this housing. Go ahead and stick it up on its end and lift our pump housing up and off. If you're having a problem with diesel getting into your engine crankcase, the most likely problem is this cup seal right here. However, do inspect down in here for any kind of lips, because that could allow diesel to go through as well. There is a bushing down in there. However, I'm not 100% sure how you go about getting that out. So, that might be something a machine shop would have to do for you. Alright, so at this point right here is very important, because you're going to have to start looking for timing marks. On this side here, which this side here is going backwards to our fuel inlet. Right there are our two timing marks that we saw through this little window. So those two will have to line back up. Those two are also going to correspond with the smaller radius on your drive. So keep all those in mind. First thing we'll do, go ahead and just lift the drive shaft up and out. Next, we have our governor. Mine's kind of gotten damaged or messed up here. There we go. So on the governor, we have this center sleeve. It has this edge cut off. This one's smooth. There is no timing on it. Just remember the cut edge goes upwards. And underneath the governor sleeve is this little washer. And then our governor weights come out like this. Right here is where those two lock in. So just pull all 6 of those out. Next thing we have is a snap ring right here. Okay, so now once you get that snap ring off, you will notice on this center H-shaped shaft, one side is smooth, one side will have a notch. Well, that notch is going to line up with a mark right here. I'll see if that camera will get it. If not, I'll show it to my other camera. On this one, there's like an I and an L. That is going to match up with that little hex right there. Or not that hex, that little line. If you don't do that, you can install it 180 out and your tractor will not start, because you will be trying to line up your timing marks in your window. Right there. You're out of time. You can go either way. So don't forget that. Now, it's kind of hard to see because mine's covered in diesel fuel. But right through here is the little flex ring that are notorious for breaking on these pumps. When you do that, you have no governor control because this cage will free spin on this hub. Well, it won't really free spin, but it has a certain area that it'll go to. You can replace this with a solid unit that all this stuff is integral and it doesn't have this ring no more. But if you do that, you have to transcribe your timing mark. Mine's right there. And you have to do that because the new one does not have that. And kind of the easiest way to do that, because if you take both these cages and just go back to back with them, your mark is not going to be correct. So if you go ahead and take that ring off and just lift this upper part on and then set it onto your new weight cage, you can just scribe it nice and easily. But I'm probably just going to keep running this one because it lasted 50 years. It'll last another 50 years. Alright, so here is one of the areas I think I might be having a problem with my tractor. These two rollers here are kind of what create the pumping action for the pump. As this spins around, like right there, you're going to have hydraulic diesel pressure push these pistons outwards. Well, as this spins around and it contacts these little lobes here, that's going to force these rollers back in. When it forces those rollers back in is when it'll push the diesel out to each injector. And this is adjustable because of this little leaf spring here. Now from the factory, there's shims behind this leaf spring. However, you can turn this screw to increase if you push it in. If you tighten this up, this spring will kind of lay out and allow these rollers to come out a little further, which will increase the amount of diesel. If you loosen it, the spring will kind of contract and these ends will push on the rollers here and you won't get near as much diesel. So if somebody comes in here and tightens this thing down, it's going to put more diesel in and the tractor's not going to run right. I think this could be one of my problems. So there is a measurement that is going to be right here. And I can probably go ahead and do that now. To figure that measurement out, I have to come in here to one of these outlets and put air pressure in, and that'll make these things come out. And then I just measure that distance. Which this distance is different for every model tractor. I'm assuming just based off of cubic inches, timing, everything, to make the tractor run right. For the 172 Ford motors, this measurement should be 1.960 inches. So before I disassemble this and clean it, I want to check and see if that's where this is or not. Because if it's more, I found my problem, because I'm pretty sure my tractor's running rich as heck. If it's less, that kind of doesn't help me none, because I think my tractor has way too much fuel and it's not an issue of not enough. Now, one other thing. This pump on this tractor is considered a counterclockwise pump, which is based off of looking at this end of the pump. So if you look right here, there's an arrow pointing counterclockwise. So this is what we want to see when we put it back together. And I say that because you can easily flip this over. See, now the arrow is pointing that way, which would be a clockwise pump. You don't want that, or else it will not run. So keep that in mind. Alright, so let me go ahead. I'm going to grab my air line. And we're going to put some air into here, which you want 30 to 100 psi. And we're going to see what this measures. And I got about 50 psi right here. So I just gave myself one heck of a diesel bath. Okay, I see that they have now expanded a little bit. So they were awfully slow to expand. I would think they should be a lot faster than that. Because I think our transfer pump, the one up top here, is like 35 to 100 psi. So I might have some pins in there sticking. That could also cause this problem. So if we're supposed to have 1.960, I'm going to go ahead and just set my caliper to that. And let's see. Well, that's about where we are. If I'm over, it's very little. This has just a very slight drag. So I believe that might be correct. Which that kind of tells me kind of a good thing and bad thing. Good thing is that means nobody came in here and messed with it. Bad thing is that means that is not the problem with the tractor running poorly. However, like I say, those moved extremely slowly, and I know this is a really small port in here, but I would think that would move a lot faster than that. And at idle, the tractor runs okay. It's when I rev it up that it has the problems. So when you rev it up, you know it's got to do it faster. So if that is working very slowly, that could potentially be my problem. And this glove here is toast. It's one of the few times I wear gloves when working with diesel and gas. Now, you can also see that there are 3 plugs here. And those have what they call vent wires in there. And probably just some other ports. This one's at an angle. These two are kind of straight. So I'm going to go ahead and get these removed just to clean everything up. These should all be Allen head. Okay, you can kind of see here how this one Allen key's level and this one's at an angle. So go ahead and get these broke free. Easier said than done, apparently. Kind of think that one just rounded out on me. I believe so. I might not be able to get these out after all. I'm really not happy about, because I'd really like to get in there and clean these things. But yeah, I cannot get those to break free. So I might have to come back and visit those. Alright, well, let's go ahead and just pull these rollers and shoes out. These things you just need to make sure they're free of movement, not bound up or anything. So obviously this one moves a whole lot freer than that one does. So let's turn this over. Go ahead and pull the top off. And this is taking them 4 bolts off. In here is that other pin that I could not remove that could be bound up, causing my problem, which might be the problem since the rollers measured properly. Right here we see CC on top, once again for counterclockwise. And remove that O-ring. These little pump vanes in here, you can reuse these, but they're like $30 right now, so I would go ahead and change them. The ones that you buy are a 2-piece vane with a spring in the middle. The originals are a single. I'll reach in here and just lift them up and out. So just wanting to bring the whole cage with it. So you can see the 2 pieces here with the springs in them. So down in the center here, which I know it's very hard to see, is a 5/32 Allen key. Behind that key is a stopper, a spring, and a delivery valve. That delivery valve can be stuck, causing my problem. So I'll have to remove all that. Now to remove this rotor, or distributor, if you want to call it that, because that's what they refer to it as. In here, you will see what looks like a giant washer. Well, that is actually 2 C-shaped pieces with like a snap ring around the edge. To get those out, to get the rotor out, you're going to have to remove that snap ring, separate the C pieces, and drop the rotor out. And if you look on the ring, there is a little groove at the end where the 2 pieces come together. If I can get this thing out of here. So here's the ring that's around the edge, and right there is the little groove. So now, should be able to move these over and out of the way enough to get the rotor to pass by, hopefully. If not, I'll have to remove them. Right here's one of these little rollers that is inside that actually creates the pumping motion. They can fall out, so be aware of that once you remove your outer rollers. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull mine off. Alright, so I could not get these out. I'm just going to leave them. Nothing I can do about it. I mean, I'm already twisted the bit, so I left it as is. I went through everything, tried to find where this thing was wrong, and I believe that this right here was my answer. Because when I took this apart, I made the comment that, hey, this thing's backwards. And as you can see, hopefully, there's like a knife edge on one side, and the other two just look like they're squared off. Well, the way I had this installed, I had the square side towards the governor. Well, that kind of limits the motion of the governor. Whereas if you have the knife edge there, the governor can actually pivot and work. Which the tractor would idle perfectly fine. There's no governor input, you know, from the flyweight assembly. But when I started to rev it up, yes, I'm getting advance through my advance adjusters, but if the governor can't move and say, hey, we don't need this much fuel, it's going to keep throwing a bunch of fuel in there, causing my issues. So I believe that was my whole problem. But like I say, the good thing is now I get a better video of rebuilding an injection pump for you guys. Because like I say, the first video is horrible. It was shot on my cell phone. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting this thing back together. As for the rebuild kit, I got the Spaco kit, which is the Italy kit. Number for this one is a 06886, or you can get the Stanadyne kit, which is a 24371. Either one will work for these pumps. As is with both of the kits, whether you get the Spaco kit or the Stanadyne, you will have a bunch of parts that you will not be using on your pump. That's just simply because these pumps, or these kits, are made for multiple pumps. Alright, so I know I didn't show this too well in the other video, and I'll tell you what, just for the video purpose, I'll go ahead and change this ring out. But I gotta fix these pliers first because they are driving me nuts because they are not set equal. This ring was replaced, so it is a good intact ring. However, when I did put it on, I did kind of tear it a little bit. And like I say, just for video's sake, we'll go ahead and just change it again. Okay, so there's that ring. Now, like I say, if you change the cage, go ahead and pull this off. Lift this piece off of your other cage. Line up your timing mark, because I think the cage has a notch in it. So line that up on your new cage. And then transcribe your timing mark to your new cage. Alright, so to do the new ring, you can see the size difference. That's what makes these so fun. But the easiest way to put these on is to take you a pair of snap ring pliers, put it down in the ring, go over top of the stud that's sticking up, kind of spread it open, and just work it around the stud. And usually the first one's the hardest one because it wants to move real bad on you. And like I say, it's even fighting me, so I mean. Okay, so there's the first one around that stud. So then you're going to skip one, come to your next one. See, the second one is a whole lot easier. Then go to the third one. Okay, so there's the third one. So now you got it all on there. Now, this does not matter where it goes. It can go in any location because this is equally weighted. Your timing mark is on this piece. This does not matter. So just throw it on there. Do the same thing. Now, the first one on here is going to fight you because it will rotate. Once you get the first one, the other two should be pretty simple. I just threw my tool on the floor. And there's that new ring installed. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm using like some external snap ring pliers. Go in there and just spread that ring open and put it on. So there's the new ring installed. And there's the old one. That's probably the hardest part, in my opinion. Okay, so in this pan over here, kind of on the right hand side of your screen, I have some fresh clean diesel. Now, you're supposed to put these plungers in under diesel. But what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go ahead and put my delivery valve in. Like I said, I got to find the stopper. I need the stopper, which is this piece. Your rebuild kit should come with that. I'm just having a hard time locating it in this kit. There it is. I figured it's probably stuck in a seal or something. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take the delivery valve. I'm going to dip it in some diesel fuel. And when I put this in there, there's a little nipple on this end. That needs to face upwards. We're going to slide that down in. Next thing is going to be the spring. And then our new stop. I'm going to kind of just push that down in there, and we'll start threading it in. Now once it makes contact and stops, stop turning. That needs to be tightened to 85 to 90 inch-pounds. So like that the torque wrench don't even click, I just have to feel for it. But they got 7 foot-pounds on there. So that's the delivery valve installed. So the next thing we'll do is go ahead and just kind of set this down into some diesel. Get it all kind of coated. Then I'm going to install the actual pistons. Well, yeah, we got to install the pistons. And they say to install them under diesel. I'm not really going to do that. For one, because it's pretty complicated. So I'm going to put one of them in. Then let's just go ahead and slide the other one in. And they're moving nice and free. And we'll just set that back in there for a second. These two rollers that go on the sides, just need to inspect them, make sure they're good and free, not damaged. Do not try and pull these straight out. This shoe is made where it will hold it. You will have to slide it. And once again, just put them in some diesel fuel. Slide them together. Make sure they rotate nice and freely. And then I'm going to take the head. I'm going to lube up the inside with some clean diesel. Take the rotor and slide it into place. Okay, so I got mine going back in there. Now, for me, since this is so tight, I'm going to have to kind of get these in there relatively soon. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick them down in here. And you can kind of see the wear on them, so put them back, you know, in the same direction of wear. And there's the rotor back in. And I don't know why, but like I say, it's extremely tight for some reason. We're going to go ahead, put them locks back on it. And we'll go ahead and slide the snap ring back on, which is probably going to have to require a couple of screwdrivers to get that on there. I'm going to see if I can kind of hold it split open a little bit, slide it down and around. Of course, they make a tool for this, but yeah, if you don't do these regularly, there's no point in buying them. You just have to get creative and figure out a way to make stuff work. Like so. And that pump turns, but it is extremely stiff. And nothing was wrong with it. I just didn't have a lot of diesel in it, I assume, because I coated it like crazy. And now it spins nice and free, so should be good to roll. I'm going to go ahead and put the top plate on it. So remember, on the Ford, it's a counterclockwise pump. And we're going to just slide that down in there. Now this does have to be indexed. And we have our 3 holes that are threaded, plus this hole, these 2 holes here. These 2 are the metering valve. So, if you imagine our pump housing, this is where our governor assembly is. And since our inlet is towards our governor assembly, you'll see that little pin right there. That pin goes into this groove. That pin will go in that groove. So, this is going to line up in this direction. There's our groove over there. We can go ahead and put that down in there. And that should be close. I'm going to go ahead now, reinstall the vanes. And I'll look up the number for these vanes and put it at the bottom of the video so you don't have to go hunt around in my other video trying to find them. Which I would suggest you just go ahead and change these because they're not that much money, and then you know that they're good. Okay. So now the next part is going to be the O-ring. And this kit comes with 2 different ones, so be sure you get the right one. It's going to be the thicker one. Your Stanadyne kit, it'll be red. Tobacco kit, it's tan. You put that on there. Now I do not have the spring in here yet. Or the piston rather. I could not remove the sleeve in here. There's a sleeve with an O-ring around it, which, like I said, I can't get the sleeve out. O-ring can't get changed. It is what it is. Well, down in there is a spring. And I just took a screwdriver and then found the tang, and you can push on it. And you see it's still pushing back on the screwdriver, so it's good. It's not broken. So I'm going to go ahead and put some diesel on the piston and slide it in. Now, I'm just going to make sure that it does move back and forth. And it does. So that's good. Go ahead and put some diesel on the spring and put the spring in. And then we got a plunger with an O-ring. And let's see, that O-ring, I believe that's going to be this orange one here. I believe so. That's going to just slide down in here around that retainer. And then we'll go ahead and put the plug in. And then we'll just tighten it down. Alright, so I'll just go ahead and add some diesel to the top here. And get that put on. So we'll go ahead and put the bolts on that have a internal tooth lock washer and a washer. And once we get these all in, we'll snug them up with our screwdriver and then come back and torque them down. And I'll put the spec at the bottom of the video because I'll have to look it up real quick. So let me look up the torque spec, I'll get that done, and then we'll move to the next step. Okay, so the torque spec on these is 25 to 30 inch-pounds. So now, let's go ahead and put the plungers back in. And they're moving nice and free. So now we'll slide the rollers back down in. And since I didn't undo the leaf spring, there's no need for me to check the measurement on these guys to see what the max feel is, because remember, this was set correct at 1.96 inches for the 172 Ford motor. So the next piece I'm going to put on is going to be a cam, and remember, we're counterclockwise, so we're going to put the arrow as counterclockwise. And we're going to go ahead and spin it we're going to put timing mark over here on the front, or which would be like the left side of the tractor, and you have a threaded hole here. Will line up with the other threaded hole. This threaded hole is for this pin, or bolt rather. The one on the cam, of course, is for the Bristol bit. And that'll probably get moved and changed, you know, in the whole process of reassembling. Speaking of reassembly, let's go ahead and put this O-ring on now. So it's the one that goes into the groove here on the head. So the next piece to go on is the governor cage. Now remember, your timing. Your centerpiece has a little notch on it. The cage has the IL, or if you got the solid cage, it should be a notch. Line that back up. And then go ahead and put the snap ring in. Go ahead and start putting our flyweights in. Now remember, the washer and the sleeve go together in the weight groove. Once you get those in there, it should set all flush like that. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this assembly back into my housing. Should be very careful with this O-ring, because if you push this too far, you can mess that O-ring up. I'm just kind of pushing down and twisting. We're trying to keep it fairly lined up. I just lined it up with this bolt hole here, and as you see, the O-ring just slid right in. And I about screwed up flipping that up to show you guys that, because I could have knocked my governor out. So once you get this like this, don't turn it until you put this shaft back in. because if not, you're going to make one heck of a mess. But you can go ahead and put some bolts in here just to secure it. But just remember, these are not tightened up yet. I'm going to set this over to the side a second. So now, on the shaft, we have the O-ring here and our 2 cup seals. Now the kit that I've got from Stanadyne did not have this O-ring. And it kind of looks like the Spaco kit does not have it either. So why, I do not know. But this O-ring here is in good condition, so I'm just reusing it. But I will go ahead and put new cup seals on. Okay, as you see, there are 2 grooves here. That is where your seals are going to rest. And of course, they're going to face opposite of each other, like so. So we're going to just dip them in some diesel to help slide them on. On your pump, if you haven't already done so, you can remove this window. And you come in here and you spin your governor. I should have done this really before I installed everything. But go ahead and line your timing marks back up. The main thing is you want to see the governor cage timing mark in the window. Which I know you can't even see it, so I'm not going to waste my time showing you guys. But I have it in the window. Alright, so now that we got the seals on here, the larger diameter is going to be towards the engine. So this drive can go in either way. The other end of the drive, it's centered. This one is not. So if you put this in backwards, you're going to be 180 out. So I have the governor timing mark in this window, and it's kind of pointing about that direction. So I'm going to push it in, and this O-ring here is really stiff. I can use a zip tie to help push this O-ring down in here, and I'm just putting like some downward pressure on the shaft and pushing the O-ring down in at the same time. So there it's going to start to go in. And I'm just kind of wiggling it down in. That, like I said, that O-ring there is extremely stiff. So I'm reusing it because that one's not coming in the kit. Okay, so now I'm down to the point where this umbrella seal is ready to start to go in. So you can either buy a tool to do this, or once again use your zip tie. Just kind of put a little bit of pressure on it. You start to push that umbrella seal down in. You see, like right here how it's popped out. You can just take this zip tie, kind of push it back, and it will go down into the bore. And I'll just keep doing that until that seal clears. Like so. So now I just have to push the upper one in, and of course it'll lay over the correct way, so there's no need for the zip tie. Just push this on down in like so. So now all we have to do is get this to line up with the governor itself. There we go. Now we're going to verify our large diameter is towards this tractor. And our timing mark are lined up. Okay, so our timing marks are lined up. Everything's in order. So now just give it a spin check. Should turn fairly easily. Might have a little bit of resistance, but should go fairly easily. Okay. And like I said, I don't know if the camera will see it, but there's the stationary timing mark, and right there is the timing mark on the governor. So what I want to go ahead and do now is we got these bolts down here that we've already put in, and then they do not get any kind of seals, which is kind of odd. Okay, so we got these just finger tight. But now we need to go ahead and put new O-rings on this bolt. There's two of them on here. So be sure you change them both. Put a little bit of diesel on them. Go ahead and slide that in. Just remember, you got to push it past the first O-ring before it'll start threading. So these are going to get torqued to 30 foot-pounds. And that goes for the side bolts. And it doesn't really show me a spec on this one, but we're going to assume 30 as well on it. Now what I always like to do is every time I tighten something from here on out, I just like to grab my pump, Just give it a nice spin, make sure everything's still nice and free. And that's just me to make sure that if this thing decides to bind up, I know what step I'm at. So those are now tight. So next step we're going to do is going to be our little cam advance screw with the Bristol bit. And where did my 1/4 inch hex go? Right there. And we'll stick that in there, tighten it up. Well, I don't see a torque spec for that. I'm going to try it at 30. If I don't like the way it feels, then I won't go past 30. Okay, 30 feels good and tight. I'd do 30 on it and roll with it. And then just give it a quick test. It seems to work just fine. So next, we got the advance pistons. Now on here, there are 2 O-rings. There's one right here near the tip, and then the other one's all the way back here at the head of the nut. And as you see, they are different sizes, and our kit has different size ones. So the larger one is under the head. Ooh, boy, that thing's extremely loose on there. Wait a minute here. Ooh, that ain't gonna work. Okay, so the smaller one is gonna go on the under the head. Now I guess we're gonna be using these brown ones here. Yep. And so the brown ones are going to go out here on the end. The piston with the spring behind it is going to go towards the inside of the tractor. But before that goes in, we have to put in this little spacer. Thread that in there. Just make sure that the little cup washer stayed in place. Like that. And then we'll take the other piston, or nut, however you want to, advance stop, or whatever you want to refer to it as. Go ahead and remove the 2 O-rings on it. Slide the bigger one all the way down. Starting to get my O-rings confused up here. And I will take the other brown one, slide it in, and then we'll go ahead and put this into place. And we'll tighten these up. So unfortunately, the manual supposedly claims there's a torque spec for these on the torque table, but I do not see it. Just make these good and tight. And like I said, I just give it a twist just to make sure everything's still good and kosher. Then we'll put on the cap. Don't use that big old screwdriver. Where'd my little one go? Oh, don't you love the losing tools you just had like 60 seconds ago? There it is. So pull this O-ring off. Put that back in there and tighten it up. Alright, so the last step is going to be the metering valve and the governor assembly and throttle. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and put the governor fork assembly in here. And this kind of just going to slide into place. Now, the part that I messed up. When you look at this crossbar, it is square shaped. However, there's one side, or I guess two, that are cut out. Well, that cutout needs to face forward or towards the top. Okay. So now I got that installed correctly, tractor should run right. And I kind of thought about why that is like that. If this is your governor arm and you have that cross beam that also has a notch like that, that governor can't move. However, if you put it this way with that knife edge, this governor can move. Since I had mine like that, that governor couldn't move. And when I would rev the tractor, it was demanding more fuel, but yet the governor was saying, we need more, because it's sensing a high load situation. Had it been able to move, it would have said, okay, yeah, we need a little more fuel for revving, but we're not under a high load situation, so dial it back. Hence the reason it was running rich. So now that the governor can freely move, I should not have that issue. So next we're going to take these two little green O-rings, slide them over the threads. And then we'll put the little nuts on here. You're just going to kind of go even with them. And let's see. Should be a torque spec on that. To 25 inch-pounds. And kind of tighten these alternatingly. Alright, so that's installed. And now my governor has free range to work like it should. So next up is going to be the metering valve, and that's going to slide in with the pin towards the governor. And it's going to drop right down into that hole there. And then we can drop the governor arm onto it. So next up is going to be the governor spring. And we have this aluminum crush washer that we're going to replace. Okay, that crush washer is just going to slide up over the thread. And we'll stick the governor bolt down in. And then we'll go ahead and put on the governor link assembly, the 2 springs, the spacer, and the 2 rivet looking type pieces. We'll slide that down on the governor bolt. Gonna slide the bolt up a little bit and hook that spring onto the back of the governor. And we'll thread that in there. Now, since I have this on here, I cannot torque that. So I'm just going to make it good and tight, and it should be a-okay. Okay, so now we have a little side cover here. That's not a side cover, this little throttle shaft piece, half, whatever. I guess I really should have researched the names on these things, shouldn't I? Okay, and it's probably going to be in this bag because this is where the little nylon pieces are. So we'll go ahead and slide that new nylon washer on there. And one of these little brown O-rings. And I'm just going to kind of loosely set that in there. We'll go ahead and get the throttle linkage side. Same thing, little nylon. And then the O-ring. So now we're going to take the little governor fork and it's going to slide over the governor bolt and then we're going to slide the linkage in. To position. And now they will should all snap into place here. Okay. So now we have our 2 clips. And like I say, they will only go on here in one direction. There's that one. And this one here is the shut-off cam. And you need to make sure that that cam rests on top of that governor. So that way whenever you pull the linkage back, you're cutting off the fuel flow. See, that'll be wide open. That right there will be idle, and that's off. So that's everything in there. So now we can change this cover gasket, which is this one that looks like an O-ring. Feed this O-ring down into the groove. Like so. Then that'll go on there. Now we can go ahead and tighten these up. And let's see what the spec is on them little guys. 40 inch-pounds. Yeah, mine only goes to 30. So I'll just have to kind of guess where 40 would be. It's about 35-ish. Okay. So now, give it one last spin check here. Things working nice, like it should. So there's the pump rebuilt. And the only thing I haven't put on is this window, which it just bolts right on, and I will put it back on there for now so I can paint this thing again, since I've knocked off so much paint on this thing. And then when I actually put it onto the tractor and time it back to the tractor, I will put a new gasket in there, and then we'll get it primed, and hopefully the tractor will fire up and run like it's supposed to now. And I hope this helps you to rebuild these things. They're not that difficult. It's just there's not the information out there like there is for a carburetor. And I'm not sure what the deal is with that, but it's just not out there. Now, with that being said, you can purchase a manual. You have to get one for the DB pump, because that's what ours is. It's a DB. Which I kind of deviated a little bit from that manual, but the end result is going to be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and safety wire this stuff back up. You know, here and here. Get this thing sprayed off with some brake cleaner. I'll probably just mask this fitting up versus taking it out. I'm going to mask that, mask my tag, and down here at the bottom, get my lines put back on it, and get that thing spray painted. Alright, so now that we got the injection pump rebuilt, I'm going to go ahead and fire it up, rev it up, RPMs. As you see, it ran just fine. So now all I got to do is get it tuned.